Medfield TV presents Meet the Candidates, interviews with our citizens running for local office. This series is brought to you by the joint efforts of Carol Mayer, town clerk, Kevin Murphy, Medfield High School social studies teacher, Aditi Tate, Cheryl Dunley, and the staff of Medfield TV. My name is Liam Dewey from Medfield High School. I will be posing questions to the candidate. She will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. At the end of the questioning period, the candidate will have 2 additional minutes to address the TV audience. This candidate is Jennifer OShea. And Jennifer, you are not related to Anna Mae OShea, correct?
I am not.
Good to know, good to know. She's running for school committee. This position is for a 3-year term, and there are 2 positions open. She's running opposed. How are you doing today?
Very good.
Good.
How are you?
Hey, I'm great. I'm very excited. So let's start questioning. My first is, why do you want to run for school committee?
Well, a few reasons. The first is, it's just maybe a personality trait of mine, but I really like to integrate myself into everything I do. I think that it makes it more meaningful for me to be a part of organizations, and especially, education is sometimes the top issue in Medfield, and my daughter's starting out in kindergarten, starting her journey through the school, so I want to be
Awesome.
as much of a part of that as I can be. She's enjoying it so far, but I feel like I've learned a lot through the years as a lawyer, as a mom, and just as a citizen of Medfield, and I want to share some of what I've learned, and I have the time and desire to do that. So,
Hey, we need
That's the
good
reason.
citizens like you. So what experience in the past do you have that qualifies you to be on school committee?
well, 3 different things. The first is practical. I've been an attorney for about 20 years, so on a daily basis, I advocate for certain positions, a lot of different positions, everywhere from banks to individual business owners to individuals with employment issues or financial issues. So I've really seen the spectrum of ideas that need attention and advocacy and someone to listen to them and really fight for them. The school committee isn't just, somewhere to go or talk about how important education is. It's really to get an idea out there and to be able to do that. Practically, I have worked on budgets, I've worked on strategic plans, I've mediated cases, settled cases, gone to court, tried cases. So that might not seem like the same thing, but to me it is the ability to take an idea and really see it through to the end and resolve it. So I think that I am pretty well versed in those types of skills. On a more sort of personal level, my mother was the school superintendent secretary for about 40 years. So I spent a lot of time with her and in school committee meetings, doing my homework there, listening to her tell me about what teachers like, what teachers didn't like, how to resolve an issue, what's important with a budget, what's important with a union, pretty much everything. And I learned a lot from that. And sort of just from maybe a high level, I've worked on Capitol Hill as well, so I've seen the legislative process. I know what goes into it. I may not directly relate to the school committee, but I think that I have an idea how politicians work, especially on the state and the federal level, which relates, I think, a lot to issues with funding and Common Core, things like that.
Awesome. What's one thing you want the people of Medfield to know about you?
I think sometimes I come across as soft-spoken, maybe a little shy, but I'm not. I'm a listener. I try not to speak before I've really thought through an issue, and I think that's important. There's a lot of people out there who just are talk, especially on social media and things, but what do they actually do for a school? What do they actually do to change the way their political situation is? And I think that that's something I'm good at, to really think about an issue and have a perspective, a global perspective. And I also think I have a good sense of humor, which I think is important, especially when you're dealing with really significant issues, to be able to see what's important and what's a side issue.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think is the biggest issue facing Medfield, and how would you tackle it?
Medfield school system?
Yeah, specifically the Medfield schools.
Well, there's three things that I've heard. I've talked to the superintendent for quite a bit prior to this to see what he perceives as the big issues. And I've talked to people with children in the schools, and I've talked to people with children who are grown. And I think one of the biggest issues is, and it always is financial, but specifically financial responsibility and sustainable growth in our town, which I think can only come from paying attention to every segment of our community. And that, Medfield is 31% of its population is over the age of 55. And I think that their voice is getting lost in community issues, especially when their kids are out of school and they're not as cognizant of things. I think that they are not being heard, and I think that's really, really important, because the people whose children have already graduated from school and want to stay in the town and love the town are the basis, the foundation for why Medfield schools are so good now. So I think that that's really important. Two more things I'll say quickly. First, another issue that I think we're going to be facing is with facilities and schools. The number of children in the elementary grades now there's some big groups and there's some smaller groups and big groups, and how are we going to fit them into schools that are getting older, and how are we going to fix them, and how are we going to pay for it within our budget without having an override. I think that's really something that the community is going to start to pay attention to.
I think communication has been an issue in this town, especially with the school committee. There's been a little bit of a disconnect. So how would you increase communication between the people of Medfield and the school committee?
That's I think a really difficult question, because it's on a very individual level too. I think that people who want to find things out can do so and may do so. So there's really two groups. There's the social media people, and they find things out and they find out what's on social media, but they may not go beyond that. And then there's people who don't use social media, which again is a huge percentage of our town, right? That probably anyone my age or older doesn't find out their information that way. They may through the newspaper, or the really old-fashioned way, the lost art of conversation with people. I think that's the number one way to increase communication, is to say, just for example, say I'm on the school committee, I'm going to be sitting in the library from 10 to 11 on Saturday morning. If you have something to say, you can come talk to me, and we'll listen. I'll listen and I'll communicate your ideas. Also through the newspaper, through mailings, and I know that the school committee does a lot of this, and it's up to the people to find out what they want to find out, but I think a little bit more can be done, especially on a more specific level, how their money is being spent, how the schools are performing.
So far in the campaign, how long, what's your biggest challenge been?
The biggest challenge is people who don't really care. I mean, it's hard to tell when you listen to people talk about Donald Trump and you talk about Hillary Clinton, and people are really opinionated, but do they really care at a local level? They do, and they should, because that's their money, and it's the money that they work hard to earn, and it's directly going toward the town that they live in and the taxes they pay and the schools that are teaching their children. So I think that the biggest issue is overcoming people's nonchalance about their community. It's easy to talk and complain, but they really have to be more engaged, and getting people to be engaged and to be aware of the issues, I think, is fairly difficult.
Awesome. How would you propose cutting red tape and bureaucracy that make it difficult for teachers and principals to do their jobs?
Well, that's a difficult question. I think the essence of what you're asking is, how do staff, administrators, and teachers deal with these overarching federal policies that people use to get maybe themselves into office, like Common Core, 1,000 points of light, no child left behind. What does that really mean? It means that it's difficult for people on a local level to implement those strategic goals. And it also means literally thousands of regulations, rules and regulations. So you can't really cut it unless you work with your legislators to change those, and that's a very slow process. But I think on a daily basis, we have to work with the teachers to remind them that they can teach within those confines, especially in a town like Medfield, where the students, most of them, are going to perform well on standardized tests and things anyway. But I truly believe that schools and teachers belong to the schools, the teachers and the students, and the staff should be able to run them accordingly, within the confines of the law to the extent that they can, but also with an eye toward the community that they're in. You know, we may not have the same needs as a town with less funding. We may not have the same needs as a town where English as a second language is a huge issue. We don't have that. But teachers are the experts in their field, and they know the students, and they make the decisions on a daily basis how those students are affected. And I wish I could do more, or the school committee could do more, and I would do the best that I could to implement that and have schools and administrators have a bit more autonomy. I mean, there's not really much you can do on a practical basis, but I think that you can definitely talk with the teachers and staff and remind them of the purpose of these policies, but also to learn to work with them.
Yeah. In the past, there have been some issues with union contractual negotiations. So as a member of the school committee, how would you fix these issues in the future and prevent them from happening again?
Well, I don't think you can ever prevent them from happening again, but what you can do is remember that the reason that these issues are happening is that it's the compensation of teachers, and teachers are the most important thing in any educational system, probably in any community, and perhaps even in the world. I mean, that may sound a little, I don't know, overarching, but I truly believe that. And to attract the best teachers and to remain relevant in today's world at a local, national, global level, teachers need to be relevant, and they need to have the relevant tools, and you need to have the best teachers, and you need to be also comparable with the towns around you. So I think that Dr. Marsden's done really a terrific job of doing that, getting the best teachers. And people do complain, and they say, why didn't we do more with the unions to decrease teacher salaries? But at the end of the day, teachers don't really make that much money. They make competitive salaries, but you need to look at it with, the eye toward retaining the teachers, making them engaged, wanting to stay here, wanting to be in the best community, wanting to stay throughout, their career. I think that makes sometimes the best teachers are those that have learned in the same community over a long period of time, and you need to keep them. And another thing people don't realize is that teacher salaries are 80% of the budget, so it's going to look like it's a huge amount, but it isn't really. It's just the big amount. So 20% remains, and I think with any fiscal period, there will be things that need more money and need less money. So if one program needs less money for a year, it can go toward a teacher's salary. And I think that there's definitely give and take there. And I think that realizing the world we're in and the town we're in will make people understand where their money's going and realize it's not a huge issue with unions, that they're not, it shouldn't prevent us from getting the teachers and the improving the system to the best of our ability.
Absolutely, absolutely. I now just want to give you 2 minutes to directly address the citizens of Medfield.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening, and thank you, Liam. I think it's important to hear different perspectives and to especially have younger people join in the political process. But with respect to the schools, it's something that's really important to me. It's been in my background. As I said, my mother was a huge influence on me and taught me everything that could, I think, possibly happen in a school system. I also think I have the background. I've spent 20 years as a lawyer, and I've become somewhat of an expert in a lot of relevant things that a school committee member does. I can advocate, I think most importantly, mediate, and I can resolve, and I can negotiate. Also, I just want people to know that I have the time and ability to be a school committee member, and I would devote everything I can to keeping the Medfield schools great. So thank you. And please vote for me on March 27th.
Jennifer OShea, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
doing this interview. We really appreciate it. I just want to remind the people of Medfield, democracy is not a spectator sport. I urge you to go vote on, at the center on Ice House Road on Monday, March 27th, as previously mentioned, from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you so much. Thank you again.
Thank you.